I'm going to talk today about Spiral, what we do, how we contribute to Bitcoin. To start, though, would like to just broaden it to talk about open source development. Lisa touched on it a little bit, but if you just think about Bitcoin, it was not venture capital backed. It didn't do an ICO. There's no central foundation for Bitcoin. Now, that's really important because it's a key part of why Bitcoin is fair, neutral money for the world. But it does come with challenges, such as who actually develops and builds Bitcoin. Satoshi, created the original code base and launched the network. But that software needs to be maintained, improved, fix security vulnerabilities. Who does that? Well, in the early days, it was a group of volunteer developers, bless their heart. And there's still, to this day, many volunteer developers who help improve and maintain Bitcoin. I think around 2015 to 2018 era, there were a handful of organizations that helped fund developers and development of Bitcoin. That was Chaincode Labs, Blockstream, MIT DCI, and there are a few others as well. But there wasn't much funding. There wasn't much development. So Lisa just talked about training developers. That's one big bottleneck in the space. But two is who's going to fund developers. So now a little bit about Spiral. In 2019, Jack Dorsey announced that his company, Square at the time, now Block, was going to fund a new initiative, originally called Square Crypto, now called Spiral. And it was the first large company-initiated endeavor to fund open source Bitcoin development. And what's really unique about this initiative, there's no profit expectations with Spiral. So I joined as the lead in 2019 and helped create the team. It's a really great organization because the company doesn't tell us what to do. We get the only thing Jack wants us to do is to do what's best for Bitcoin in our own judgment. So they give us an annual budget, and myself and the rest of the Spiral team get to decide what we do. So really our customer is all of you. Our customers are the whole Bitcoin community. And I'm proud that in the past 4 years we've funded over $10 million worth of grants and over 50 individual grantees with our Bitcoin development grant program. And I'll go through some of the projects that we fund in a few minutes. I'm also excited that the more the merrier, right? We also don't want just Spiral funding Bitcoin development or some of the earlier organizations like Chaincode. But in the ensuing years, there's been a significant growth in both companies that are seeing the merit in giving back and funding open source development and writing checks, like Coinbase and Kraken have. Bitwise, which is a new Bitcoin ETF, they're really interesting because they give 10% of their profits from the ETF back to open source Bitcoin development. And who do they give it to? Some companies, it takes a lot of effort and time to figure out who to fund, which projects to fund, whether to renew grants. And so companies like Bitwise and Coinbase, they don't invest their time doing that. Instead, we have organizations like Spiral, but also organizations like OpenSats, which I know some folks here are involved with, HRF, which is a sponsor here, Brink, there's people in the audience from Brink. These organizations are similar to Spiral in that they are really well connected and understand the Bitcoin development space, who's doing great work and merits funding. And so there's just been a big rise in the number of organizations that can help fund Bitcoin development. So getting back to Spiral, what is our own mission? Where do we hope to contribute to? I'd really say it gets back to Satoshi's original vision in the white paper, which is peer-to-peer money, digital cash. And I say that because a lot of people in the audience probably strongly believe in Bitcoin as sound money and a store of value. I totally agree with that as well. In my mind, that's a slam dunk. The product's already built, it works, there's product market fit. So while there's definitely services like Unchained Capital and other wallets and infrastructure needed to promote that, and also educational content, the core product works. However, to extend that to digital cash and money that you use as a medium of exchange, there is still a lot of engineering work remaining, a lot of design work, and many other efforts. And it's not a certainty that it's going to scale to everyone on the planet, at least scaling all of the inherent properties of Bitcoin to everyone. It's still a technical challenge. We don't really know how to do it yet. So our focus at Spiral is on that problem. And why is that important? Well, we're all familiar with cash and physical money. Humans have been using it for centuries to make payments and to facilitate commerce. There's very important properties of physical cash that are lost with the digital money that we use today. And during our lifetime, that digital money has grown tremendously. And like I basically use Apple Pay now on a daily basis. I don't carry around cash. Why do we do that? Why do I do that? Convenience. There's a lot of nice things about digital money. I think most people don't realize, though, there are risks and dangers with today's digital money, and that it loses some of the properties of cash. And that's, namely, there's a middleman with digital money. So censorship resistance and privacy are two things that are being lost in this transition. Enter Bitcoin. Bitcoin promises to solve that, but again, there are remaining technical challenges to make that so it's accessible to everyone around the planet. Quick note on how is Spiral organized? So like I said, Block gives us an annual budget. What do we do with that money? I already mentioned the grant program. So a portion of our budget goes towards the grant program. We also have a full-time team, though. It's largely engineering-centric. We have 7 developers that are focused on the Lightning Development Kit project, which I'll mention a little bit more in a minute. And I think Lisa mentioned it as well. We also have a few engineers. We call them Spiral Wizards. They are focused on more R&D projects. As I just mentioned, there are still unknown solutions. There's innovation and research to be had to truly scale Bitcoin to everyone. So our wizards are looking at how to unlock some innovation around privacy, scaling, and security. We also have a couple people who act as PMs and help coordinate efforts in different projects in the space. And we also have a creative person where we dabble in some creative marketing around education. I'll give you a few examples in a bit. So I'm going to go through a few examples of projects that we contribute to. In total, there's about 12 open source projects that Spiral has either helped create or helps fund or contribute to. The first is the Lightning Development Kit. So as the name suggests, it is a software development kit that helps other developers integrate the Lightning Network into their application. Some of the developers here in the audience that have used it, and I think anyone that's integrated Lightning knows how complex that technology is. And if you didn't have a development kit like this, it would be nearly impossible to build an application or wallet, at least in any sensible amount of time. And as I go through these projects, one thing to keep in mind with open source projects, adoption of that project is always a challenge, because many open source projects are started by a developer who has an idea, is excited about it, builds the software, but then there's no marketing or sales team around that project. And it's often even hard to attract other contributors to the project. So one thing that Spiral tries to help the projects we fund are to grow the development community around that project, and then also really sort of pound the pavement and help with marketing and awareness to get adoption of the project. So for LDK, a few example adopters: Cash App from Block, which is a very popular mobile app and wallet. It uses LDK. Mutiny is a really exciting mobile wallet. It uses LDK as well. Lightspark is also adopting LDK. And each of those 3 applications is also a unique use case or way that they're using LDK. One's a mobile wallet, another is a custodial wallet, and then another one is an infrastructure provider where they're scaling, they're doing non-custodial but running LDK on their enterprise servers. Next project I'd highlight is the Bitcoin development kit. Again, as the name implies, it's a software development kit, very similar to LDK, except focused on layer 1 on-chain Bitcoin. So if you want to build a Bitcoin wallet on-chain, BDK is a very useful library and tool, and we're seeing strong adoption there as well. Mutiny uses it as well, and the examples I have here on the slide, Envoy, which is a wallet from Foundation, uses it, Bull Bitcoin uses it, and BitKey, which is a new wallet from Block, uses it as well. And even like one of the co-founders of this project, Alikos Fellini, he just announced his own hardware wallet. He's also eating his own dog food, and he's using BDK in it. So it's exciting to see where BDK is being deployed inside hardware wallets, on servers, on mobile phones. So really great to see these tools make it much easier to develop applications. Maybe think about building like iPhone apps, and there was no Apple development kit, and there's no app store, no libraries, and you had to do it like at the bare metal. Think about how hard it would be to build that app. That's kind of like how it's been to build Bitcoin apps historically. So I think these types of toolkits are going to rapidly accelerate how fast that development can occur, and also be more accessible to more developers to be able to build these types of applications. Another project that that Spiral helped co-found and fund is the Bitcoin design community. And when we started Spiral, the idea I had in mind is design's very important. It's underinvested in the space. And also open source design wasn't really a thing. And no one really even understood what that meant. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna hire a designer to help kickstart this. So I interviewed over 50 designers for this role, never found the right person. But it wasn't due to these not meeting a bunch of great people, a bunch of great designers who were very dedicated to Bitcoin. But I think I was looking for like a unicorn role. And what I learned is there's 50 amazing designers I met. They're all on their own little island throughout the world, and they weren't connected. So I'm like, why don't we just create a design community, bring them together? And that's exactly what we did. And we ended up funding several designers through our grant program to help kickstart that. And it's flourished since then. I think it's going on it's on its 4th year now. And the design community has created a Bitcoin design guide, which is a really useful resource for any builder in the space. There's always design challenges and problems that you encounter with Bitcoin that are unique and sort of designers and builders haven't encountered probably in their career before. So they can use this as a useful guide and tool. Also, the design community is engaged with many projects in the space, different wallets, and different websites, different startups, different companies to help them with design in Bitcoin. Fediment's been mentioned several times this week and earlier today. It's an open source protocol. I believe Spiral's the largest funder of open source Fediment protocol development outside of maybe the company Fedi. We funded 4 developers the past 2 years, big believers in this project and eCash. And see how it can solve a lot of the problems that exist in Bitcoin today, reaching more people, giving them Bitcoin payments that scale well and no fees, and also has very strong privacy properties. I like what Mutiny is doing in particular, where they're trying to blend of Lightning and Fediment together and create a cohesive user experience. I think that's a great experiment, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Stratum V2 is another project we support. If you're not familiar with this project or what even Stratum is, it's a Bitcoin mining protocol. It's the protocol that's been around for over a decade between mining pools and miners. And since it's been out for a decade, as you can imagine, there's areas of improvement. As the name implies, V2 has improvements. I think the most important one to communicate is it improves decentralization. Today with Stratum V1, only the mining pools get to select Bitcoin transactions, which is a centralizing factor. Something like 2 or 3 pools right now are over 50% of the hash rate. With Stratum V2, anyone can select transactions. So any miner can select transactions. Even a third party can select transactions. So it just makes it much more flexible. So this project has been 3 years in the making. There's an open source reference implementation. Spiral's contributed a lot, but so have many mining companies as well. Foundry and Galaxy have contributed to this. Brains has contributed to it. So it's a well-supported project in the space. The software is matured to a point where I think this year is when we're going to see adoption. Riot is already testing it, and several other companies in the space are already testing it. I think we'll see real hash rate adoption this year. Last example I'll go through for projects we fund. This is a bit niche and nerdy and technical, but I think really important for Bitcoin. There's a developer that goes by the NIM 0xB10C. We funded in the past year or so. I think OpenSats is funding him now. But he does really important work. He builds tools that monitor the Bitcoin network and monitors the network and miners for things like censorship. Like are miners and mining pools, are they mining blocks that have OFAC transactions or are they not? He's built tools to detect that. Another recent tool he's built is around mining non-standard transactions. Which are gaining in popularity because some of the BRC20 and inscriptions and ordinals applications are needing to use, or they feel the need to use non-standard transactions, and those are being mined. The reason why it's important to monitor that, there are some consensus valid transactions that can actually create denial of service and security issues for the network. That's why the Bitcoin Core project has defined some of these transactions as non-standard, as sort of a flag and warning that these could be very disruptive to the network. So this developer has created these important tools so that anyone in the space can monitor and see what the trends are for these types of activities. Last thing I'd highlight about our grant program at Spiral is that almost everyone who's gone through our grant program, it was their first time funding for Bitcoin open source. So we like to we really try to attract new talent to the space and get them involved in Bitcoin. And not only have we done that, but almost everyone who's gone through our grant program, when they graduate or they move on, they stay in Bitcoin. And here's just a highlight of some of the alum from our grant program, but over a dozen alum have gone on to found their own companies and to become like Bitcoin Core maintainers or to get full-time jobs at prominent companies in the space like River and Voltage. And I don't know if Justin Moon's here today. He was here yesterday, but he was a grantee in our program, and he wound up co-founding Fedi. And actually, FI3, that's a NIM. He's the developer who's been the lead for the Stratum V2 project I just mentioned. He did that for 3 years, poured his heart and soul into it, and now he's gone on to co-found a new Bitcoin mining pool called Demand, which is using Stratum V2, which is really exciting to see. Just a quick touch on, I mentioned Bitcoin wizards within Spiral. Again, we are very bullish on technologies like Lightning, but there's absolutely more work to be done, more R&D, more innovation in the space to improve scaling, security, and privacy of Bitcoin. So we went out of our way last year to hire engineers, senior engineers, wizards who really know Bitcoin deeply and hopefully can move the needle on this. And just this year, we started a new weekly study club just to make sure we're on top of all the exciting new proposals and innovations in the space. And we're also hiring. So if you know any senior engineers who really know Bitcoin deeply and are interested in deep, rich Bitcoin R&D, please reach out to me or to Spiral. Spiral.xyz is our domain. Last thing I'll touch on, I mentioned creative marketing. We like to have a little bit of fun too. So we're mostly a bunch of engineers and nerds in Bitcoin, but we do have a person who has a very creative mind on the team. So we've created a couple of films. The first one was highlighted the Lightning Development Kit, but we used Puppet Jack. So we created a puppet that looked like Jack Dorsey, and he was the star of the show. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's pretty funny. And then last fall, that was a couple of years ago, last fall we introduced a new film. This one's much broader than just LDK. It's all of Bitcoin. And this was titled, Who is Bitcoin? I mean, many people in the space answer the question, what is Bitcoin or why Bitcoin? But no one really had ever answered the question, who is Bitcoin? Other than Craig Wright tried to do that. But so we created this large orange puppet and gave this person a personality. And then it's a funny film that tries to be educational as well. But he has a crisis in this film that all they talk about is Bitcoin going to $1 million, and Bitcoin is so much more than that. So the film covers that and tries to teach people in a new way. We feel like there's room for like new approaches to marketing and being more lightweight and accessible. Like a lot of the messages with this group are around like sound money, privacy, very, like to many people, like the extreme views. And I think that's good. I think it resonates with the people in this room, including me. But I think other people, like a lighter touch, more comedic approach as their first entry point to Bitcoin could be valuable. This is an example. Hopefully it inspires others to do similar things. And with that, I'll wrap up. Here's a few pointers to where you can find us, and would love to take questions.
And yes, Justin will be here presenting later, so it'll be cool to have seen not just the godfather of awesome BitDevs, but a future Spiral grantee who then founded a company, and he'll be presenting on Fedi today. So thank you, Steve, for that talk, and we'll start with the Q&A.
Hi, I'm Mason. Thank you for the talk. I'm curious, when you fund a developer, what comes with that? What sorts of resources? And then a follow-up question is, with the creative marketing, are there any ideas that you're still thinking about that you haven't been able to do yet?
Yeah, so the first question, our sort of standard nominal grant is a one-year grant, $100,000 US. The grantee can choose whether they receive that in fiat currency or Bitcoin or a mix. In fact, we even have the option of denominated in Bitcoin. So if you want to do that, like whatever the price of Bitcoin is at the start of the grant, we buy that much, a year's worth of $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, and then you get monthly disbursements. So financially, that's how it works. In terms of like how it works during the grant, we do quite a bit of work up front vetting the proposal. So we accept we don't dictate what people work on. We want to hear from you, from applicants. What project do you want to do? How do you think you'll impact Bitcoin? And that's important for two reasons. One, we don't want to dictate everything that's done in Bitcoin, and we don't have all the best ideas. But secondly, the grant program, we're not your boss. Like we're not gonna, you don't wake up in the morning and hear from me about what you should do that day. You need to be a self-starter, and you need to know what you want to build. So it's important for us to hear, like, what do you want to build? And then, give us some reason for us to believe that you can execute on it. Like, do you have an engineering background, or like what, or have you already started contributing to open source? That's the best way. Like if you want to work on like Fediment, like if you've done 3 months and submitted some PRs and gotten them merged and reviewed some PRs, that's a great way to get a grant. So I think that's the answer to your first question. The second one was around creative ideas. Yeah, I mean, we're open to any. If anyone has creative ideas that they'd love to see us do, let us know. But like I said, we'd love to inspire others as well. And in fact, with the who is Bitcoin, associated with that is Here Comes Bitcoin. So there's actually a website, Here Comes Bitcoin, and we don't want this character and this story to be just. It's for Bitcoin. It's open source for Bitcoin. Anyone can take the story brand and run with it. If anyone wants stickers, I left some on the table over there. They're free to have. So we'd love to see people build on this as well. Maybe in the back.
Let's go here first.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll go back.
So is your team responsible for Proto as well? Like, how does that kind of fold into Spiral?
Yeah, that's a great question. I talked about our independence, but I didn't really go into detail. And it always, even this week when I got here, some people are like, "Oh, great job on Cash App," and it's like, "Well, thank you, but actually, I'm not responsible for Cash App." So, Block has two big businesses: Square and Cash App. That's the two large businesses, the breadwinners for the company. And then like Cash App, of course, has supported Bitcoin for, I don't know, what, 6 years now or something. You can buy and sell Bitcoin on Cash App. There's also many new initiatives, and you mentioned Proto. So Proto includes both Bitcoin mining initiative and the BitKey wallet, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. So there's a number of new product development initiatives within the company. All of those are commercial initiatives, for-profit initiatives, and Spiral's not responsible for any of those, and I'm not either. I'm definitely, I'm involved with them. I help consult, especially on Bitcoin, BitKey and mining, and my own thinking. Like, why do I spend time on that? Because I don't need to help Block as the company make money and build new products. But those two projects in particular, I think, will massively help Bitcoin overall. Mining, there is a lot of centralization in mining, and it starts with the ASIC chip. There's only two main manufacturers, Bitmain and MicroBT. They're both based in China, so there's great geopolitical risk there. Like, if the Chinese government wants to just cut it off, where are our ASIC chips coming from? So it's very important for there to be more producers and designers of ASIC chips and geographic distribution. And then BitKey, I think, has really innovative recovery and user experience for self-custody, which will be a great product for people with their coins on an exchange, scared to self-custody. It's a good baby step for them. And I hope that some of the innovations in that product will find its way into other products in the space as well.
Steve, thank you for your presentation. A couple quick questions, one easy one, and one you can jump into more. Did I see Who is Bitcoin on What Bitcoin Did podcast?
Yes.
And number two, can you speak to how artificial intelligence, large language models are influencing, I'm not a coder, are influencing the development of these LDKs, the Lightning Development Kit, the Bitcoin Core developers? Curious about that.
Yeah. So for the first question, we did go on Peter's show and brought Bitcoin with us. It's a bit of a unique type of show, I think, for Peter. I don't think he really knew how to handle it. But it's good to have Haley on the show as well. She's on my team, and she's done a lot of great work on this. The second question, I think AI and Bitcoin. I mean, in terms of making a difference on the development of Bitcoin projects. I mean, the simple answer is I'm not aware of any impact yet. So, having said that, I definitely see experiments happening right now. Like on the LDK project, and I believe the BDK project, there is a tool called CodeRabbit.ai that's being used, which is an AI which is doing a code review automatically and then providing feedback in the PR. Is that valuable or useful yet? I don't think so, but I think it's promising medium to long term, but I don't think it's really moved the needle yet. Our team's also done some experiments with creating like a custom GPT, feeding it in all of the lightning bolt specs and a bunch of code bases, so that creating a tool to make it much easier to ask technical questions about using LDK or other projects. That was just done. So we're going to see whether that's helpful or not. But I think it's important to experiment right now. And whether it's now or maybe in a year or two, I do think holds a lot of promise to improve productivity around development. But I also don't think AI is going to start coding LDK for us anytime soon.
Like you talked about, it seems like grant money is increasing. Like the ETFs, obviously donating part of their profits. Y'all are doing an incredible job. But just curious about how y'all think about measuring success with these types of projects, where you're kind of giving people money, they do a proposal, they work on something for a year, and then there's an outcome. And what are you guys looking for there?
That's a really good question. One thing we look for is, I mentioned adoption earlier. And actually, more broadly, we published a post which speaks to 4 phases, our view on 4 phases of an open source project, where phase 1 is like maybe one developer with an idea, so they create the project. And phase 2 is like they attract other developers. It becomes more of a community and public good. And the third phase is adoption of that project and starting to get multiple funders. So it's not just dependent on Spiral funding. Like in our mind, we want projects to be, even if we just disappear, we want those projects to be sustainable. And then the fourth phase, of course, is that. Like we could just walk away and any project we might have had a hand in, it thrives. So from a project level, we look for progress along that, and adoption being a really key one. But on an individual basis, who might be contributing to like Bitcoin Core or Fediment or whatever, we look back at like what was the proposal that they provided us. I mean, one thing I forgot to mention earlier. So we do a lot of vetting up front, but once we are like, hey, Michael, we want to give you a grant, we're very hands off after that. Like you have the whole year to do your thing. You can work whatever hours you want and wherever location. You have a lot of flexibility. But we look, when it comes to a renewal, what was that original proposal? Do we still believe in it? And the answer is almost always yes. I can't even think of an example where it's like, oh, we thought it was valuable and then now it's not. And then, was legitimate progress made towards that? And if yes and yes, then it's a pretty easy renewal as well. But also we don't want the grant program to be a forever thing either. Like we do want grantees to do great work and make accomplishments, but then, like I said on that alumni slide, we want to see people go through our grant program and then go on to bigger and better things as well.
We got time for one more question.
Hi, thanks a lot. My question is, when I think about Spiral, I think about Lightning. Not necessarily in terms of grantees, but in terms of like the team that y'all have there. Do you see that being the sole focus of Spiral going forward? Will y'all get into something like Fediment on a primary basis, or is that just going to be through the grantee program?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's partly like my fault and our marketing fault, because we probably overweight LDK too much in like how we're known. I mean, it is true. Our full-time engineering team has been dedicated to that project from day one. We did change that last year, as I mentioned, where we've hired a couple of developers to explicitly not work on LDK, work on other problems in Bitcoin. And in the hiring we're doing, we're looking to expand that as well. The study club we started at the beginning of the year is to really get us up to speed on all the other proposals, because if there's, Fediment in my mind was easy to sign off on, like let's support that project 2 years ago when I learned about it. So we've been funding that through our grant program. But if there's other, if there's other proposals, new protocols, new innovations that make sense to us, we'll absolutely keep funding it through the grant program. And we're also not averse to having full-time resources work on new projects too. Like anyone who's worked on Lightning, it knows it's very complicated. It's not perfect. Tony's in the crowd. He can tell you all about what's not perfect about Lightning. So we don't have our heads stuck in the sand. We know that. We still think Lightning it's not dead, and it's a tool that's going to be used 10 years from now as well. So we're very committed to LDK and Lightning. But having said that, it's not perfect. So if there's some new, better project that complements it or even competes with it, we're happy to put resources on that as well.
All right, let's give a big hand to Steve. Steve, thank you. Really appreciate it.